Before I start talking about the sequel trilogy, I want to look at this essay written in 2006 on like a Star Wars forum called "Why Star Wars Fans Hate Star Wars." It's really interesting to reread now because it talks about all the issues fans had with the original trilogy, why they hated the prequels, why they hated the expanded universe and everything. And it feels like seeing the backlash to the Disney sequel trilogy, history is kind of now repeating where we go through this cycle of people hating Star Wars, but then eventually coming around and saying, it wasn't that bad and everything. I really hope that the person that wrote this essay, like, eventually updates it or something to talk about this Disney sequel trilogy. Anyway, you all probably know the story by now that George Lucas pretended for several years, I'm never going to do 7, 8, and 9, but then in secret he was writing plot outlines. He decided to sell Star Wars to Disney because he was just tired of being criticized all the time and saying, you raped my childhood or whatever. Bob Iger, he received the treatments for that George Lucas wrote, and but he wasn't obligated to actually use them. And Disney went and did their own thing, and George Lucas had seller's remorse for before Force Awakens was released and gave interviews basically saying, they didn't go with my ideas. They're being too safe. Disney is white slavers. Yeah, Lucas was just belly aching a lot. And watching Force Awakens, I can kind of see why. It's like after the prequels, Disney felt that they had to play it safe, and so instead of doing something new, they basically took the story of A New Hope and kind of mixed and matched it everywhere, and J.J. Abrams basically kind of did a feature-length homage to the original trilogy. So, but it's still more watchable than the prequels, though. I'm not in agreement that suddenly the prequels are better movies. I mean, I will concede that George Lucas was trying to be more original and more different, but still, overall, Force Awakens is much more watchable and more enjoyable. But if you do try to deconstruct it and really think about it, there are parts of this movie that kind of don't work. We get the new characters like Rey and Finn, and there's good ideas, but there's also poor execution with those ideas. Finn is a reformed stormtrooper, and he basically just wants to get away from the First Order, and that's a really cool idea. But then we get kind of the poor execution where it's a little clunky, where he tries to lie to Rey and say, I'm actually with the Resistance. And ever since I saw the Nostalgia Critic on movie cliches he hates, like the liar reveal type plot, that kind of felt a bit lazy, but it does get redeemed in the end when Finn stands up to Kylo Ren and gets into a lightsaber fight with him. Rey, let's see, orphan on a desert planet, discovers that she has force powers, has to fight, a giant planet-destroying superweapon. Where have I seen this before? But anyway, there's good ideas with Rey. She's held back by, wanting to find out who her parents are and everything, but then when she finds out she's force sensitive, it does kind of feel like she starts using the Force a bit too quickly. Luke Skywalker in A New Hope didn't start, pulling stuff or doing the Jedi mind trick, on a whim. So it does kind of feel like she learns things a bit too fast, and I'm kind of tempted to agree with people that call Rey a Mary Sue. But on the other hand, when you're watching all the Star Wars movies and you see in how the Phantom Menace, 9-year-old Anakin is able to destroy the droid control ship on his own, pretty much by accident and everything. Is a young adult, doing some amazing feats with the Force really any more plausible or less plausible than a child doing stuff with the Force? I don't know. Rey doesn't seem that bad when compared to Anakin in the Phantom Menace. We get Poe Dameron, the new Resistance pilot, who's basically this movie's version of Wedge Antilles, but he's barely in the movie, so I can't really talk about him until the Last Jedi. We got BB-8, basically this movie's new R2-D2. When I first saw the trailers and I saw BB-8, I was like, how does BB-8's head stay on that beach ball of a droid body? But BB's actually pretty endearing and really fun to watch, especially things like giving the thumbs up to Finn and everything. We get reintroduced to Han Solo and Chewbacca and Leia, and it's great to see them come back. Han has basically become this kind of crotchety, grumpy old man, but it's just really great to see them again. And I know people complain about things like, how does Rey know so much about the Millennium Falcon? That's not really stuff I thought about at first. I was more concerned about, Rey doing, amazing feats with the Force. I didn't really think about how she knows the Millennium Falcon or whatever. But anyway, we get introduced to Starkiller Base, basically the new Death Star, and basically J.J. Abrams picks and chooses a couple ideas from the old expanded universe that's no longer canon, like the Sun Crusher and the Galaxy Gun, and basically he combines them to create Starkiller Base, and which is able to like suck the power from stars and destroy multiple planets at once. We get to see like the Hosnian system, before it's destroyed, seeing all the people looking at the super laser in fear, and then they get blown up and everything. But I don't know. It kind of would have been nice if we actually got to know what the New Republic is like, so we actually care that if they're getting destroyed or whatever. Because I guess Disney got a bit too afraid of getting political at all. Getting into boring political scenes, disputing over taxation of trade routes or whatever. So, unless you get into the expanded universe, the new Disney expanded universe stuff, you're not really going to know stuff like what exactly is the relationship between the Resistance and the New Republic and everything. Well, we get introduced to Kylo Ren, and he's probably, at least in this movie, one of the best characters, I think. I feel like Kylo Ren is almost a metaphor for Disney Star Wars. They want to be legendary like Darth Vader, but they can't quite measure up and everything. And it's interesting to see Disney kind of go this way. Like I think in the original concepts for Episode 7, they had ideas for a Jedi killer, and then that eventually became Kylo Ren. Adam Driver does a great job as him, and we get that one really creepy scene where he's talking to Vader's helmet, and it does kind of set up some mysteries like, is Darth Vader really speaking to Kylo Ren? How can he be in touch with Darth Vader if he was redeemed and everything? And who is Supreme Leader Snoke? They introduced Snoke as a giant hologram, and you got to wonder, where was this dark side dude hanging around when Palpatine was running the galaxy? Where did Snoke come from? Let's hope that Episode 8 answers these questions really well. Oh boy. But anyway, overall, Starkiller Base gets destroyed and everything. Han is killed, so Harrison Ford finally got the death scene he wanted, and Rey fights Kylo Ren. A lot of people complain about this scene, like how does Rey fight Kylo Ren when she's received no training with a lightsaber, and I don't know, Rey uses a staff, so I guess maybe that's how she knows how to fight, I don't know. The movie's enjoyable, and unfortunately Luke is only in the movie for like 30 seconds at the end, and there's the scene of Rey and Luke meeting at the end of The Force Awakens is really touching, but then when you see Last Jedi, it kind of, what Luke does next when he's handed his father's lightsaber, yeah. But anyway, Force Awakens, is it as good as the original trilogy movies? Not really, but I'd rather watch it over the prequels. It tries to be a nostalgic throwback to the original trilogy, and it's okay. Overall, let's hope the foundations that Force Awakens set up really gets paid off in Last Jedi. Yeah, I'm really excited to see Episode 8 now.
One Last Jedi viewing later.
God damn it. Rian Johnson, what were you thinking? Really? Okay, this is the movie that divided the Star Wars fandom. Oh boy. Like, just search Last Jedi review on YouTube, and oh my god. How many people just have torn this movie apart? The fight scene between Rey and Kylo Ren and the Praetorian Guards is the worst fight scene ever in Star Wars. 12 things The Last Jedi gets wrong in the first 10 minutes. It's just really insane. It's like people watched the Harry Plinkett reviews of the prequels, and then they were inspired to just do the same thing to The Last Jedi. It's oh my god. Jeez. I don't really know what I can add, but I'll just give my own perspective. My feelings is basically I'm mixed. Like the prequels, Rian Johnson, who takes over directing duties from J.J. Abrams, he had good ideas, but they were not really executed really well. I feel like apparently Rian Johnson started writing Last Jedi before Force Awakens was released. So, and I feel like Rian Johnson just went with the first draft, and when he should have just kept going and writing more drafts to really iron out the little kinks and everything. So this is going to be really disorganized the way I review this movie, because it's 2.5 hours long. The longest Star Wars movie yet. And there's just so much packed into this movie. I don't know where to begin. I guess I'll go over this movie by looking at each group of characters and their individual story arcs and everything. So This movie picks up like 10 minutes after The Force Awakens ends, and right there is probably the first problem. Like, being an immediate sequel to The Force Awakens, this doesn't really feel like Episode 8, the build up to Rise of Skywalker. This feels more like an extended aftermath to Episode 7. So that's kind of the first misstep of the movie right there. It's kind of interesting to do something different, having, the movie takes place right after immediately the previous movie, rather than like a time skip, 3 or 10 years into the future, like, Attack of the Clones or Empire Strikes Back. But really, maybe that wasn't the best choice in hindsight. The Resistance escapes their planet, whatever. I forget the names of these new planets. But they escape, and Poe Dameron, he destroys a Dreadnought Star Destroyer, but in order to do it, lots of bombers have to get blown up and everything. And we get, I think her name is Rose Tico. Her sister gets killed, sacrificing herself to blow up this Dreadnought. And it's basically setting up Poe Dameron's character arc. Like, he was barely in Force Awakens, so I'm glad he gets some more screen time in this movie, where Leia has to try to teach him. Sometimes you have to be a leader. You can't just always go guns blazing. Sometimes you have to use strategy and conserve people's lives and everything. So we have the good setup to what could be a good plot, a good character arc. But then Leia gets blown out into space, and we get that really cringy scene of Leia force pulling herself in outer space back onto the ship. Admiral Akbar also dies. I don't know. I didn't really think anything about it at first, because Akbar's only memorable scene was saying it's a trap in Return of the Jedi, but a lot of people were really upset at it. Even the actor who played Admiral Akbar was like really disappointed that he just gets killed unceremoniously. So yeah, Rian Johnson should have been a bit more aware how people might react to seeing a character like that killed off. But anyway, Leia is incapacitated, and that's when we're introduced to Vice Admiral Holdo, who, honestly, she's probably one of the most unlikable characters in a Star Wars movie. I mean, she's not Jar Jar levels of bad, but still, like, the movie does a really poor job of, like, trying to endear you to Holdo, and she treats Poe very condescendingly. Like, I don't remember if it was Nando Re-Writes Movies or Captain Midnight, one of those YouTube channels that goes over script doctoring. Like, they could have made Holdo better if, like, it turned out she was a First Order spy, or maybe someone else is a First Order spy and she's not telling Poe because she doesn't want her actual plan to leak or anything. I guess that would have helped explain her motivations and everything. But just the way the movie presents her, it's just not really good. So Poe Dameron's character arc, good idea, really poor execution. Finn recovers from his injuries from the previous movie when Kylo Ren cut his back open, and he meets Rose Tico, and at first you think Finn is about to run away. Like, I felt like Rian Johnson was basically going back on the character development Finn had in the previous movie, but then you learn that Finn was just wanting to warn Rey not to come back to the ship, so it kind of sort of recovers, but still, it almost feels like Rian Johnson was just going to have Finn's character just commit character arc suicide or whatever. Maybe that's why John Boyega is apparently not happy with Last Jedi. But anyway, him and Rose Tico formulate this plan to find this master code breaker, because the Snoke's supremacy, his super duper Star Destroyer, is able to track spaceships through hyperspace. So they have to find this master code breaker who can disable the hyperspace tracker or whatever. And they go to this casino planet called Canto Bight. Now, this was kind of interesting because the Darth Plagueis novel, it has a brief scene that takes place on a casino planet. So it was kind of interesting to actually see a casino planet, in a movie. So, yeah, I thought this was kind of interesting. But then when you really think about it, the Canto Bight sequence is kind of disconnected from the rest of the movie. And Finn and Rose, they fail to actually get the Master Code Breaker. Instead, they get this guy named DJ. And there's some interesting political stuff going on here. Like, Finn is kind of enamored by Canto Bight because, he was a First Order stormtrooper. He's never seen a place like this. But Rose is smarter because she and her sister were grew up in a bad place or whatever. And they know that places like Canto Bight are funding the First Order, or they're funded by the First Order or whatever. But then when they pick up DJ, He's like, oh, the people on Canto Bight, not only do they fund the First Order, they also fund the Resistance. Like, the movie's trying to comment on the military-industrial complex, but it's not really connected to the larger story. Like, it's never a plot point that, the First Order is getting all their weapons from Canto Bight or whatever. Like, I don't know if maybe there was weapon canisters or something that belonged to the First Order on Canto Bight, and Finn and Rose destroyed those, maybe. That would be more tied in. I don't know. Instead, they rescue a bunch of animals while ignoring a bunch of slave children on the planet. Like, what? I don't know. This is just really confusing. I just don't know what Rian Johnson was thinking here. This isn't one of those places where I can say good idea, poor execution. This is just poor idea, poor execution. There's Rey and Luke Skywalker. Oh boy. Just like how George Lucas shit on Force Awakens before the movie came out, Mark Hamill likewise was pretty open in interviews before Last Jedi came out, basically saying, I fundamentally disagree with Rian Johnson with how he's portraying Luke Skywalker in this movie. Eventually, I think Mark Hamill came around and said, you know what, Rian Johnson made the right decisions all along, but then the damage was already done, and a lot of people were really turned off by how Luke is portrayed as this crotchety, really grumpy, and just doesn't care about what's happening in the galaxy anymore. He's no longer optimistic or anything. Like, when I first saw the trailer for Last Jedi, it got me excited seeing Luke say, it's time for the Jedi to end. Like, holy crap, where are they going to take this? On one hand, it felt a bit like Disney was basically canonizing the Very Lonely Luke parody Twitter, where Luke is portrayed as this grumpy person on Twitter. But on the other hand, I was kind of excited, like, wow, where are they going to take this? But then you actually watch the movie, and it's like, first scene Luke is in, he's handed his father's lightsaber, and he just throws it behind him. Like, I get that what Rian Johnson is trying to do is to give Luke a character arc where he's reluctant to train Rey at first, but starting off our introduction to Luke with him just throwing away his father's lightsaber like that just feels way too farcical. It would have been, like, saved some dignity for Luke if he just was handed the lightsaber and then just gave it back to Rey and walked away grumpily. That would have at least, not have been as unintentionally hilarious. But anyway, eventually Luke comes around and he's like, okay, Rey, I'm going to give you 3 lessons on why the Jedi must end. And the first lesson is basically the Force does not belong to the Jedi. And we get this kind of funny scene where Luke is tickling Rey's hand while she's trying to reach out. But we get this really poetic imagery. We see the light, the dark, life and death and everything. This is a much better way of describing the Force than just midichlorians in your blood or whatever. But then Rey is tempted by this dark side cave, and Luke gets scared and is like, I've seen this power before, and he's reluctant to train Rey again. And then we get lesson number 2, which is basically Luke just lays this major smackdown on the prequel era Jedi. The Jedi are plagued by a legacy of failure. People see them as legends, but really, they were powerless to stop Darth Sidious from taking over the galaxy, and they trained their own enemy, Darth Vader, and everything. Like, holy crap, it's like Rian Johnson listened to all the complaints people had about the Jedi and the prequels, and basically incorporated that into why Luke basically ran away from everything. I actually find that kind of interesting. Unfortunately, we then get into the part about why Kylo Ren fell to the dark side, and we learn that Luke Skywalker tried to kill Ben Solo. Like, holy crap. A lot of people really objected to this. Like, why would Luke do this when he was willing to redeem Vader and everything? And, like, again, for me, it's like an interesting idea, but poor execution. I think it's kind of interesting to see how Kylo Ren's character arc is kind of like a twisted version of Anakin's character arc. The Jedi were reluctant to train young Anakin because, we can't see into his future. It's kind of dangerous to train someone who has not, received Jedi training from the beginning and everything. And Luke sees the darkness in Ben Solo, and instead of, like, training him anyway, he thinks, I'm going to exterminate you. Like, what if they did that in Phantom Menace? The first time Jake Lloyd comes into the Jedi room, he's too dangerous, we have to kill him right away. Like, okay, maybe that would be a bit too extreme, but I think that's kind of an interesting idea. But the idea that Luke would be a killer and stuff, like, yeah, Rian Johnson should have thought things through better. There's a tie-in novel called, I think it's called something like Bloodlines or something by Claudia Gray, and it gives some. It was released before The Last Jedi and gave some hints as to why Ben Solo turned to the dark side, explaining that he found out that Darth Vader is his grandfather, and that caused great conflict in him. I kind of wish that Rian Johnson had incorporated some of that novel into Last Jedi. Like, I know the movies should not be dependent on the books, but I think that would have been interesting. Like, it would have been easy. Like, just have Luke say, Kylo Ren found out that Vader's his grandfather. That started, his descent into the dark side and everything, and Snoke was manipulating him. I think it would have been interesting to, like, try and tie in the novels a little bit more with the movies. And then we get to lesson 3. Oh, wait, that's on the deleted scenes. Yeah. The third lesson, Rian Johnson, for whatever reason, deleted that. I don't know why. But it was really important that we get this one scene of Luke drinking some green alien milk. Like, what the hell? Rey's training with Luke? Good ideas there, but poor execution. And then we get to Snoke and Kylo Ren. And here we finally see Snoke in all his glory instead of just in a hologram. And in Force Awakens, Snoke was kind of flat. But here, Andy Serkis is allowed to be much more hammy and everything. And he's really enjoyable to watch as Snoke. And he lays a smackdown on Kylo Ren. Oh, you were beaten by a young girl who never had training with a lightsaber at all. And that causes Kylo Ren to smash his helmet. And then we get these scenes of Kylo Ren and Rey talking to each other through the Force. And that's really interesting, seeing how Rey goes from saying, you're a monster, but then she gets to know Kylo Ren a little bit more and learns about how Luke tried to kill him and everything. And then she feels more sympathetic. And it's like, maybe I can turn Ben Solo back. But then she goes to Snoke's ship. And it turns out Snoke was actually tricking Rey the whole time, creating this force bond between him and her and Kylo. So, whoopsie daisy. Basically, it's weird. Like, Rian Johnson tries to be subversive and, like, tell a different story that's not a copy of Empire. But then at the same time, Rey leaving Luke, kind of like Luke leaving Yoda too early. It still feels like, the movie's a subversion, but also still copying, previous movies a bit too much. But then we get one of the most divisive scenes. Kylo Ren kills Supreme Leader Snoke. Like, holy crap! We never got to know who Snoke was or anything. And they just kill him now? On one hand, I can understand people's disappointment that we never got to learn who Snoke was, but on the other hand, like, let's be honest, a lot of the fan theories about Snoke, Snoke is really Mace Windu, he's Anakin's dark force twin or whatever, or he's actually the stormtrooper who bumped his head into New Hope. Like, a lot of these Snoke theories were pretty out there, honestly, and really had no evidence to them, so I don't know. But I thought this could be interesting because now Kylo Ren has killed Snoke, and basically he's doing what Vader never did in Return of the Jedi. He's actually going to rule the Empire and everything. So Rey thought that she turned Ben Solo, but it turns out Kylo Ren's like, no, Rey, I want you to join me and everything. But then Holdo does the Holdo maneuver and hyperspaces into the Supremacy. And that does make me wonder, like, how come they never did something like this before? Like, and wouldn't it have been nice if, like, maybe Akbar was a co-pilot with Holdo, or maybe he replaced Holdo altogether and he was the one doing this suicide strike? I don't know. That would have probably been a better way to end Akbar's character arc or something. I don't know. But anyway, and they also break Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber. So I don't know why Rian Johnson did that. I don't know. Killing the past or whatever. But anyway, it's the ending sequence where it just, the movie kind of just gets really weird and everything. Like, Snoke is dead. The Resistance has been shot down to, like, one last ship, and they're trying to hide on Crate. But then the First Order pursues them. Kylo Ren is now Supreme Leader and everything. Finn and Rose go out in these ships to try and destroy this giant gun that's going to shoot the hangar door that's protecting the Resistance. But then Rose tells Finn, no, you're not going to be able to do it. And then she crashes into Finn's ship to stop him from going on this suicide mission. And then we get this one line that people just really hated. I don't remember the exact wording, but it goes, we're not going to win by destroying what we hate, but by saving what we love. This could have been a touching line if it wasn't for the fact that the giant gun then destroys the hangar door afterward, and it's like, dude, Rose, Finn was trying to save what he loves by destroying this thing. I don't know, it's like Rian Johnson wanted to write something that sounded wise, but doesn't really hold up when you actually analyze the scene. And then Luke Skywalker suddenly appears on Crate, and Kylo Ren gets super angry. He gets out and is like, I want to kill you, Luke Skywalker. And then we get this really interesting lightsaber fight where Luke doesn't really fight Kylo Ren. He's just dodging and kind of just playing with Kylo Ren. And the Resistance figures out, Luke is just being a distraction so he can escape. And then it's revealed that Luke Skywalker isn't really there. He's actually force projecting himself onto Crate and basically humiliates Kylo Ren and everything. Like, this was another part that people really hated, that Luke isn't really there. I can understand what Rian Johnson was trying to go for. Instead of giving us, this dramatic final battle between Kylo Ren and Luke, he tries to do something that's more of a mind game where Luke is tricking Kylo Ren and everything. But on the other hand, people find that kind of disappointing. But the whole purpose here is that Luke is trying to turn himself into a legend or something. Like, I don't know, Rian Johnson saw the Dark Knight trilogy and was like, we have important symbols and legends and everything. Like, on one hand, Luke is saying, we shouldn't look up to the Jedi as legends, but now he changes his mind and is like, now I'm going to be a legend and everything. I guess it's an interesting character arc. I don't know. This scene kind of feels like it's really awesome for Luke doing this mind game with Kylo Ren, but on the other hand, it kind of puts down Kylo Ren. Like, he's now supreme leader of the galaxy, but he's humiliated by Luke, so it's like on one hand, Rian Johnson elevated Kylo Ren to be the next Emperor, but then he puts him down. It's like, how can we really take Kylo Ren seriously as the now the new main villain? Oh well. But anyway, Luke Skywalker dies for some reason. I don't know. Like, I guess Rian Johnson did this so that Rey has to fight Kylo Ren on her own in the next movie. Kind of like in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore dies. So in the next book, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are on their own to kill Voldemort. Oh yeah, I haven't said anything about Captain Phasma. I guess that just shows how much of a forgettable character she is. But anyway, she's introduced in The Force Awakens, and she looks like she's going to be this badass character. She's a stormtrooper wearing chrome. But then she just gets disposed of, thrown in a trash compactor, and it's kind of a waste of a character. But then she's back for like 2 minutes in The Last Jedi, and she has this awesome fight scene with Finn, but then she's disposed of yet again, really fast. So again, they just wasted her character, which is a shame because this comic here, the Captain Phasma tie-in comic, it portrays her as this real badass, and she's killing anyone who might have potentially been witnesses to her disabling the shields on Starkiller Base. So, and there was originally a deleted scene where Finn actually calls out Phasma for disabling the shields on Starkiller Base. So it's like, this is a problem with Rian Johnson. Like, we get these important scenes, like Luke mourning Han after his death, Rey receiving her third lesson, Finn calling out Captain Phasma. Like, important scenes that just end up getting deleted or relegated to the novelization of the movie. Like, what gives? The Last Jedi is just a really big mess. There's good ideas here, but Rian Johnson just didn't really execute them very well. And to be honest, I don't know. I'm not really excited when I started seeing trailers for The Rise of Skywalker. I'm not as excited, as compared to when I saw trailers for The Last Jedi. Like, we see the ruins of the second Death Star and then Palpatine laughs. That's kind of interesting. Oh, they're going to bring Palpatine back? But on the other hand, that kind of feels like it undermines Kylo Ren being the new Supreme Leader and everything, and how he could have, I don't know, he could have been running the First Order even worse than Snoke or something. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to see Rise of Skywalker in a bit, so I'll do a much more fuller review of that. I hope you all enjoyed my reviews of the entire Skywalker saga, 1 through 8 and everything. Hello, Peter the Cat here again from the future. It's been 2 months since I've seen Rise of Skywalker, and I've been editing my reviews together, and I just realized that there's still more stuff in The Last Jedi that I haven't talked about. The movie just has that much stuff in it. So anyway, one thing I forgot to talk about was the dark side cave scene. Now, Rey is like trying to look for answers to who her parents are, and so she's tempted to go into this dark side cave on Ahch-To,
and then when she goes inside, all she sees are this endless reflections of her, and it's pretty imagery, but I have no clue what any of it means, and I didn't learn what it's supposed to mean until I read this interview with Rian Johnson explaining that it's supposed to symbolize that, Rey's trying to look for answers, but the only person she can depend on is herself. Like, how's anyone supposed to figure that out without reading that particular interview? I also forgot to talk about the reappearance of Force Ghost Yoda. What happens is Rey gets the truth from Luke about what happened between him and Ben Solo, and then Rey leaves to try and bring Ben Solo back to the light side, and then Luke gets so angry that he decides to set this Jedi tree on fire that contains the sacred Jedi texts, because he's like, oh, it's time for the Jedi to end and whatever. But then Force Ghost Yoda appears and tries to comfort Luke, and then kind of as a screw you to Luke, Yoda then sets the tree on fire himself by striking it with lightning, and then Yoda says something like, oh, everything Rey knows is no longer in that tree or whatever, and it's all just another, from a certain point of view thing, because Rey took the Jedi text with her before Yoda destroyed the tree, so once again, Luke has a mentor, telling things from a certain point of view to mislead him. Oh well. But anyway, Yoda then explains the moral of the movie so all the idiots in the audience can understand, the greatest teacher failure is, and this is Rian Johnson's excuse for why so many plots in this movie just go nowhere, like, Poe Dameron's trying to overthrow Admiral Holdo, but then, Leia stops it, and, the whole revolution was for nothing. Well, it's because he had to learn from his failure. Oh, why does the whole Canto Bight sequence, mean nothing? Because, Rose and Finn bring DJ with them to stop the hyperspace tracker inside the Supremacy, but then it turns out DJ betrays them and they're almost going to die. Oh, it's because, they had to deal with failure. Why does Rey fail to redeem Ben Solo? Oh, it's because she had to deal with failure and everything. This whole movie is about failure and how you have to learn from your mistakes and whatever. It's a great idea and concept, but Rian Johnson just botched the execution. I also forgot to talk about one of the most controversial things in this movie, Rey's parentage. After Snoke is killed and Rey and Ben Solo, well, Kylo Ren, he hasn't really been redeemed. They kill all the Praetorian guards. Kylo Ren then tries to manipulate Rey and is like, oh, you are nothing. Your parents, they were just these drunkards who sold you for drinking money, and they were nobodies. Basically, this really upset a lot of people because there were all these fan theories. Oh, Rey is Obi-Wan's granddaughter, or Rey is Luke's daughter, or maybe Rey is Ben Solo's secret cousin or secret sister, or maybe Rey is Palpatine's granddaughter, or... Oh, yeah, JJ took notes on that one. But anyway, my feelings were seeing this scene like, yeah, maybe the execution on this wasn't done really well, but on the other hand, I was okay with Rey being a nobody. Like, I just... Seeing all these ridiculous fan theories, it's like, you know what? We don't need Rey to be another Skywalker. Whoop, JJ took notes on that too. But we don't need Rey to be an Obi-Wan or Rey to be a Mace Windu descendant or she's Boba Fett's daughter. It's just, we don't need another I'm your father reveal. It's just been done. So I was okay with Rian Johnson kind of subverting the whole parentage thing. But of course, if you've seen Rise of Skywalker, JJ decided to just go back on it. And I also didn't talk about the ending. Like the scene where, the legend of Luke Skywalker spreads, and then we see kids playing with their toys. And then we see this one, slave kid on Canto Bight, is able to force pull a broom to him. And then he looks up at the sky and holds the broom like it's a lightsaber. It's actually kind of a pretty ending, but again, JJ just went back on it in Rise of Skywalker. So, Last Jedi, it's yet another beautiful mess, kind of like the prequels. There's a lot that Rian Johnson got wrong, but there's also some things he got right here and there. And unfortunately, since there was pretty much no plan to the Disney sequel trilogy, JJ tried to backtrack a lot of what Rian Johnson did and just made an ending that was just really, really, really wacky. Eventually, I'm going to do a Rise of Skywalker review. I'll probably do it when it comes out on Blu-ray in March or something. I'm actually glad I didn't do it immediately because now we've had things like Colin Tevorrow's version of Episode 9, The Duel of Fates has leaked, and now that's online, and we see what he was planning to do before Carrie Fisher died. So anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this marathon, me going through episodes 1 through 8 of Star Wars, and eventually I'll do The Rise of Skywalker sooner or later. So, Peter the Cat here. Bye, everybody.
So what you're left with is something that Walt Disney could have done just as well with a drawing board and pencils and colors.
All right, Roger Ebert, beyond the undeniable fact that it's clearly perceived as entertainment by a great many people, how would you argue that it's a great movie?
These are the sorts of movies that Disney people should be making and the kinds of movies that Disney made 20, 30 years ago.